Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Today's podcast is going to be about assimilation and homesickness. So, if you haven't heard these two terms before, today is the day. So, what does assimilation really mean, like beyond adapting to a new culture? Assimilation is often described as learning a new language, following like social norms, understanding cultural differences if you happen to be in a new culture. But these are the only visible layers we see. On a deeper level, assimilation is an emotional negotiation. It involves which parts of yourself you keep and change, which parts you adapt, and which parts you quietly let go of in order to belong, so to speak. So, what people don't talk about enough is that assimilation is rarely neutral. It often carries pressure, sometimes subtle, sometimes explicit, to sound different, act differently, or think differently so you are not seen as acceptable or integrated over time. This can create a split between who you are internally and who you present to the world. You might function well, even succeed, but still feel slightly misaligned, as if you are always translating yourself. It is true that sometimes assimilation isn't just about fitting in. It's about whether the new environment allows you to exist fully without constantly editing yourself. It's very important sometimes when you go to a different country that you have to show certain traits, certain behavior that you're telling the other person that, look, I belong. You might end up actually picking up bad habits sometimes. Like, for example, if the target culture, they have certain habits that are associated with that culture to fit in, you start picking up bad habits. Let's say, for example, the target culture you are in, the gamble, and you feel like you are the only person that does not gamble. So to you, you're going to start to pick up gambling because you want to fit in. Because maybe when you are around those people in a different culture and they don't invite you, they don't like associate with you because you don't gamble. So because you want to fit in, because you are in a different culture, you will start to pick up on those behaviors too. Now, another term people talk about is this homesickness, right? Imagine going to a different country. Let's say you are in France right now, and after a while, you start to feel bad, start to feel that you're missing home, that maybe you don't belong here, that people here are strangers and they're different, and you start to like feel nostalgic about maybe being at home, doing certain things at home or in your home country you could not do here, maybe like fasting in Ramadan or maybe celebrating Eid with the family, right? When you have those kind of events and you watch on the internet, you watch people celebrating, but you are not celebrating yourself, you start to feel homesick, right? That is homesickness. Now, how does homesickness connect to assimilation? Homesickness often appears as a side effect of assimilation. The more effort you put into adapting to a new culture, the more aware you become of what feels neutral. Homesickness isn't just longing for a place, it's longing for ease. At home, communication with the family is instinctive. Humor doesn't need explanation. You don't need to explain or over explain a joke. Silence doesn't feel awkward if you're silent. People know you, right? If people know you at home, nothing feels awkward. People are used to you, right? But when you are in a different country and you have these kinds of behavior, you will start to feel terrible because you're doing certain things that people don't understand, don't relate to. When you assimilate, even ordinary interactions can feel mentally demanding. You're constantly monitoring your words, your tone, your behavior. And over time, this can create an emotional fatigue, right? In a way, homesickness emerges as a response to that exhaustion. In other words, your mind is asking for rest, familiarity, and emotional safety. In a way, this feels like your identity is under attack. And your brain is saying, like, look, you need to go back to your home country. You need to go back to your other culture. You are changing, and you shouldn't change, right? Because think about it, you lived with your family members maybe for a long time in your country for a long time. You did certain things, you had hobbies, you had a lot of things in your home culture that you developed a personality in your home country. And now when you move to a different country, a different culture, it feels different to adapt because people are not used to your personality. Sometimes will never you get used to it, right? So you have to constantly keep changing to fit the mold, so to speak. um there is this thing that happens feeling in between. When you are in a different culture, you feel like you are in between. You don't belong to your culture, and you don't belong to the target culture, neither you belong to yours, right? So why do people feel this in between and never fully belong to a certain culture? This in between feeling is one of the most common experiences among people. Usually, if you move to a different country, you are gonna get this in between feeling. As you assimilate, you change your habits, your worldview, even maybe your emotional responses to a certain situation. But when you return to your home culture, you might realize you no longer fit there in the same way either. So, this actually happened to me learning English. Even though I didn't go to a different country, I feel like mentally I did. I interact with a lot of native speakers on a daily basis, and I feel like I'm in between, Like when I communicate, when I talk to people, like in Morocco, I feel like I don't belong, right? In the same way, I don't feel like I fully belong when I talk to native speakers. So I'm always in between. There are certain behaviors that I don't tolerate anymore in my target culture. Same thing is true for the target culture. I can't tolerate other behaviors that are maybe strange, that are too different, right? So this in between feeling is definitely suffocating. It's something not really, really good to live with, so to speak. So this in between feeling is definitely unsettling because humans crave clear belonging. You want a clear belonging. I belong here, I'm from there. You need those kind of categories to belong, right? This in between space lacks firm labels, which makes it harder and harder to explain to others and sometimes even to yourself. However, this state also can be expansive. It allows for diverse perspectives, to empathize with different cultures, different people, and to be flexible. The discomfort comes not from being in between in a way, but from being told directly or indirectly that being in between is not valid. Most of the time, I actually find myself in this spot. Sometimes someone is going to say, look, the West are doing this, the West are doing this, the Americans are doing this. And I don't necessarily agree. And I feel like people, when they say this, they instinctively think, since I'm from Morocco, I would 100% agree with them, that Americans are this, Americans are that, or those people are this, and that they kind of give them labels. And since I am from that target culture, they want me to agree, they want me to belong. And I feel like, again, in between, I'm like, I don't necessarily agree. I think they might be wrong, right? And same thing is true for the, if when I'm with my American friends, they say, all right, look, Moroccans are this, Moroccan have this, Moroccan have that. And since I'm not 100%, I'm not American too, I'm in between. I feel like I have to defend also the Moroccans. So in a way, I have to defend both the Americans and also the Moroccans in between, so to speak. Question that most of you ask yourself on a daily basis: can assimilation feel like losing your identity? And yes, it does. Especially when assimilation is framed as replacement rather than expansion. If you are replacing certain cultural habits, certain ways of doing things, yes, it would feel as if you're changing, losing your identity. But when people feel they must suppress their accent, for example, you speak with a Moroccan accent, you go to a different country, you're trying to work really hard on your accent, you don't want to speak like a Moroccan, or avoid cultural references, or maybe sometimes you distance yourself from the roots. Assimilation then starts to feel like an identity loss. This loss is often gradual, obviously. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment, but in small choices. Not correcting someone when they say something bad about your culture, not sharing a memory from your target culture, not speaking your language in public. And over time, these choices accumulate, and people might feel disconnected from parts of themselves they once valued. That's why assimilation without self acceptance can lead to resentment, sometimes also sadness, or maybe emotional numbness, which is really, really terrible to happen. All right, let's go to the last question. Is homesickness always about wanting to go back home? Most of the time, we talk about homesickness. Yes, I miss home. I need to go back home. Not necessarily. Many people who feel homesick know they cannot, or they do not want to return. What they miss isn't the location, so to speak, but the feeling of being fully understood. Homesickness sometimes is a desire for recognition rather than relocation. If you have people that think the same way, or people accept you maybe in the target culture, you wouldn't want to go back home. If you have the same experience, you live, you celebrate a certain occasion the same way you do celebrate it in Morocco, you would not feel as sick, so to speak. So, this homesickness can be triggered by something very small, like a smell, or a phrase, or a song, or even maybe a way someone laughs, or a way someone says something. These moments sometimes remind you of a version of yourself that existed without explanation. You didn't need to explain yourself for exhibiting a certain behavior. You are not wishing to undo your past and journey and accomplishments. You are grieving the simplicity of what once was. In other words, homesickness is not backward looking, it's reflective. It asks you to acknowledge where you come from and how it shaped you, right? All right, everybody. There is so much to talk about when it comes to homesickness and assimilation, and I felt like we should table this for the podcast discussion. Hopefully, you like the podcast. Until then, bye.